Hey guys, it's SD, your host of the Life Picks Relationship podcast, where people with all sorts of backgrounds, challenges, and life experience show us how they make their relationship extraordinary.
Hey guys, hope you're having an awesome day and enjoyed last episode with Zach as he shared his incredible story of everything he's gone through, everything he's done, and where he is today. It literally blows my mind. Today we have a really requested topic. So many of you asked for it. And I'm so excited to have here today with us the author of Safe to Love Again, a book all about the attachment theory and really how it's important to first feel safe to feel emotions. Now, you all know that I really believe that we need to feel safe emotions. If we need to have hard conversations, the first thing we need to do is create a safe space. So, creating a safe space to feel these emotions is so in what I is so in line with what I believe. So thank you so much, Dr. Gary Salyer, for being here. I am so excited. You want to start by telling us, for those who don't know what attachment theory is, what the four types are and how they are developed. Okay, Dr. Gary Salyer, thank you so much for being here. I am so excited. You want to start by telling us a little bit about yourself?
Well, I'm just what I do is I do attachment-based relationship mentoring is basic. Attachments theory is the science of how our brains get wired to love and be loved. And I call myself a transformational relationship mentor because it's not enough just to coach. It's not enough just to give people skills. You have to truly transform how their entire, system feels about love. Feels, not just knows, not just thinks, but feels. And when two people are arguing, if they're not having the experience they want, it's the feelings that are running the program. Old feelings usually. So I swap out old feelings of unworthy and uncherished and disempowered, so both people can feel worthy and cherished and empowered and welcome. And when they do that, love can just circle up.
Yes, exactly. So you want to start by telling us, for those of us who don't know what the attachment theory is, how it is, the four types, and how they're developed.
Okay. So attachment theory is, like I said, it was created right after World War II when a guy by the name of Dr. John Bowlby, he was working with kids that in the British orphanages that most of them had lost both their parents due to the bombings. And these kids were dying for seemed like no good reason. They were fed, they were supervised. Why were they dying? And Bowlby said, for due to lack of attachment. Now, he wanted to use the word love, but that didn't sound professional enough, according to his wife later on. So he used attachment because it sounds like a really good academic term, right? But it's love. And from his observations, then, one of his students did this experiment where they want to know, how do we track this? How do we prove it? And so what they did is they separated young children between 10 months of age and 18 months of age. And what they found out was that these kids displayed four broad patterns of being attached to their moms. It's been later done with fathers and the same results. But back then, this was the 50s, right? Right. And there were the children that when mom left the room and they came back to the reunion, yeah, they cried some, but it was like they were expecting mom to come back. They didn't like, but there was no big shakes, and there was a joyous reunion. It was almost like the kids were saying, oh my God, I don't like it when you leave, but I knew you were coming back and I'm going to be there, right? And now these grew up to be securely attached. We call them the secure, right? And by secure, that means they feel comfortable depending on somebody and being dependent on. They usually pick really good partners. And my motto for them is they take no BS and they give no BS. But there was actually three other types. There's the anxiously-avoidant. These were the children that were given attachment, it wasn't there. Given attachment, there. Their attention, not there. It was intermittent. And some part develops a fight response. It says, I want to lock love down. Tired of this thing getting away from me. Right. So they would be really upset. They wouldn't be consolable. They wouldn't go back out and play with their toys. Right. And these are the ones that grow up in relationships, the anxious, like, where were you last night? Do you still love me? You didn't text me back in 10 minutes. Right. Right. That sort of thing. There's another child, though, that one would be playing with the toys, and mom left the room, and mom left the room. And you'd think when you're looking, boy, what a precocious, mature little child. But what had really was going on, they had realized that due to early experience, that mom didn't have that great of an attachment to them. So they were on their own, and they grew up to be avoidant. They grew up to be emotionally dismissive. They tone down their feelings. They don't feel into yours. And their worst fear is being depended on. The anxious is, when does love go away? And for the avoidant, when does love stay? And so they don't want to depend on anyone. They don't want to be depended on. Often emotionally dismissive. The term for them, if they're male, is the emotionally unavailable male. Now, there's a fourth category that was called disorganized. These had both fight and flight. They were usually pretty abused, and they had more. And the disorganized is more than just the normal splitting the difference. We can all be a little avoidant and a little anxious at times, especially if the situation. And so I didn't discuss them much in my book, because 80% of those children have cluster B personality disorders. It's not normal middle class craziness like you and I. So, but for most people out there, just think in terms: do you feel comfortable depending and being depended on? Does love feel good, and it feels good being depended on? Or is your worst fear, when does love go away? And some part of you knows that in your attempt to lock it down, you tend to drive people away. That would make me anxious. Or is there some part that says, boy, I don't know. When I have a breakup, I just get over things really easily. And is your worst fear being depended on, or being dependent, or you tend to feel that emotions aren't comfortable, then you're more avoidant. So just think, if you're out there listening, which one generally fits your style.
Yeah. Is the disorganized, I heard a lot of times they've been extremely abused. And you just said now that it was because they have personality disorders. Is that because they go together? How does that work?
Well, the best, about 50% of the population are securely attached.
50, that's really high.
Yeah, 50. Yeah, sometimes I've wondered if it's gone down in the last few years, but I'm giving you the latest results. This is between 20 and 30. And by the time 20 and 30, 50% of the population are securely attached. Now, as they get married and stay in long-term relationships, that means they're out of the dating pool, and the dating pool becomes more anxious and avoidant. Each other's worst nightmares. That's the draw on this, right? 25% are anxious, 20% are avoidant, and 5% of this what's called anxious avoidant or disorganized. A lot of times you can see extreme, like in the original research, these babies, the mom would come back in the room and they would freeze, which is not fight or flight. This is real reptilian. Freeze is when a baby is your response when you think you're going to die. This is what reptiles do. And they would literally sometimes fall backwards. This is because their system was naturally, as a baby, they need support and a bond, but some part is scared rotten. And this terrible disjuncture can create horrible patterns. And about 80% of those babies can grow up with cluster B personality disorders. You've probably heard it as antisocial, borderline narcissist, or, there's another one in there that's more dramatic, but if you look at that, most people don't fit into that. Okay. And the rest are usually severely avoidant. So this becomes more of a clinical thing, right?
Yeah. And I understand you said it develops afterwards. Okay. So
Yes.
First of all, before we get deeper into it, in case more people want to go and become secure, obviously that's our goal. Do you find that people in the same category are attracted to each other?
Well, the funny thing is what we know is secure tend to say, they have what I call a full set of rights. They have a full right to love and be loved right back, right? To give and to be given back, to be cherished and to be cherished right back, and to empower and to be empowered back. So when they tend to 85% of the time choose someone else's secure because they remember the operative term I gave for them was they give no BS and they take no BS. People who feel worthy of having their needs met don't find a taker. People who feel empowered and they have that feeling don't find someone who will dominate or they'll lose someone in a relationship. The funny thing is, the law of attraction from hell is that the anxious are often attached to, and they attach to the avoidance. And at first it seems like salvation, for the anxious. It's like, oh my God, I don't have that intrusive mom or dad anymore. I can be in me. And then they find out, yeah, but they're always like in the next planet, right? And for the part of the avoidant that really does want a connection, but they're afraid of having it. At first it goes, oh, look at this person that wants a connection. And then it's like, oh my God, they want a connection. Right? And they overwhelm and underwhelm each other. If you think about it, one analogy I used once is it's like we're all wired for 220. Right? And we want to find 220. If you have a dryer and it's rigged for 220, it doesn't run real well unless you plug it into 220. But what happens in early childhood for the avoidance, they amp things up. And so it's like they're running at 440. What happens so you fry out relationships. The avoidance, they tone things down. They're running at 110. So what happens when you put 440 and 110 together? The circuit breakers go off. Whereas that doesn't happen at least to my circuit breaker when my dryer and my is connected up properly to its 220. So it's all about getting us back to 220. So the avoidance can come up and the anxious can settle down. That's how love thrives.
Okay, so let's go through both the anxious and the avoidant and discuss what more in depth exactly how we can go and become more secure coming from that place.
Okay, good. So one of the reasons I wrote the book is because out in there in attachment, they use these 3 labels, right? So I call them 3, but there's 4 labels. And I learned something at a party a few years back. I was at this party, and it was a growth community over in Marin. And at least 20 people had read the book Attached by Amir Levine and Rachel Heller. So that was the first popular book, and it goes through these 4 categories. But it doesn't really tell you how to get back to secure. It tells you who you are. And I kept getting the same story, but the one guy said, I read the book and I got halfway through and I felt hopeless and I put it down. I go, why? He goes, well, once I learned I was avoidant, I realized, he says, I started feeling like I was walking around with this huge electric sign above my head that said screwed. And I had heard that from both men and women. That great, it was insightful, but a part of me doesn't, how do I get back? Now that's why I wrote the book. What is the road back? Because a label and $5 just might get you something at Starbucks. That's, a label doesn't empower people. To say you're anxious or avoidant, great. That's pathologizing. But what I talk about is what I look at that strange situation. That was the name of that experiment, right? And I said, so if we're going to find the way back to the home port in our own heart and someone else's, where it feels safe, those kids, because at 1, whatever told a 1-year-old child their love is what's telling all brains, because it's so early. And what we know is those patterns will track for their life. That's what's truly amazing. By 1 year old, your brain has gotten templates or rights for love, as I call it. They've given certain feelings. And I asked, so what goes into that before? Well, it's not limiting beliefs like we've been told. because the prefrontal cortex only comes on at 3. This is 2 years before that. So it's not limiting beliefs. It's not stories per se, although they have an effect later on. It's not identity. It's not, hi, I'm ST, or I'm Gary, right? Nothing like that. There's no logic. It's not skills. It's not coaching. The only thing up and running at 1, anybody who's worked with a child knows it, feelings, just feelings. I said, so it's feelings and just feel. And I go, okay, 6,000 words in the English language for emotions, one way or another. Not all emotions are created equal. Which ones tell us we're securely loved, so that we go on and we have a right to pick out somebody that lasts. And it turns out that there are these 4 feelings that you're given between 0 and 3. And if you were given welcomed with joy, oh, there's a little ST, so glad you came into the world, right? Or, as an adult that comes into, as, you wake up in the morning and your beloved wakes up and says, good morning, gorgeous. Or you say, good morning, handsome. That's welcome with joy, right? Or when you come in at night. And the other one is worthy to have your needs met. Those babies were given timely bids for connection, and they were met back in an attuned way and in a timely way. Okay, tuned and timely, right? And so that's what it feels like. So it's good to reach out for needs, knowing we're going to get them back. If they get it wrong, they're going to try to get it right. It's okay to have our needs and to receive and take. There's cherished and protected. Once the child gets mobility, they realize, oh my God, I'm over here, mom's over there, dad's over there. Oh my God, I'm a me. What does that mean? And so they get to be a me in a we. If you notice, toddlers don't want you leaving the room. They don't want to play with you, but they don't want you leaving the room, because they want to know they belong into a we. That template goes with this for life. So they want to know they're cherished and protected, and then empowered with choice. So do I get to create my own interior experience? Do I get to be good with being, good and bad, strong and weak, love my sister, pull her hair, all that stuff, sort of stuff, right? We get to be all of that, create our own experience, and to have a voice, to have a say. So if those secure babies were all given 4 feelings, they feel not just in thinking about them, they feel them in the back of their head and in their body. They feel a right to be welcomed and worthy and cherished and empowered. Now, what if you weren't so welcome? Or if you weren't treated so worthy? Or you weren't so cherished? Or you weren't empowered? You were disempowered? Those feelings will also become your reference feelings for love. Your brain will only have a right for those, and it will seek them out. And you will become either anxious or avoidant.
Does it depend which emotions you got or you didn't get, depending which one if you'll be anxious or avoidant?
I've seen them both ways, but for instance, welcome with joy. If you were really not welcome with joy, most of the time, I'm more anxious. And I think it's because I had the mitigating experience of a grandmother. But if it had been just my borderline mother, I probably would have been avoidant. But her mother knew she had a mentally ill daughter and tried to, for the first 7 years of my life, mitigate that. So there's little things so that's why I became more anxious when most people come avoidant. But if it had been just mom and I, there would have been no other way my brain, it would have been the logical choice. Now, that's the other thing. If you are anxious or avoidant, your brain took the best deal available. I guarantee if you're Annie out there, you're thinking, oh my God, there's something wrong with you. No, your brain did exactly what it needed to do. I mean, when I was born, my mother was looking for a girl. So much so, I guess my Aunt Evelyn told me that I wore pink for the first 6 months of my life. Okay. And I've had some people quip that explains a lot, but on the other hand, and I found out later on that she had not named me at the hospital, and the state of Ohio had to send out state troopers 3 weeks after I was born and saying, ma'am, you must name your child. And she said, screw it, I'm not naming him. And one of the cops said, well, ma'am, either you come up with a name or we're going to take you to a place where you have lots of time to think about it. And so it became, my Aunt Evelyn said, "No, who's your favorite two movie stars?" And she said, "Gary Cooper and Dean Martin." And so it was.
That
Now,
story.
yeah, so that most people will become, there's not. And then I got way more right to be separate than to belong. So later on, I would be up in my room, being distant, playing by myself. Because if you're downstairs, you're not welcomed. You're not, and you could be abused. You could be knocked against this. Now later on, distance equals safe. Okay, but I was anxious. I was afraid one does love will go away. When's all that's going to happen? So when I get in a relationship in my first marriage, there's a part of me that's definitely afraid she's going to leave, but another part seeking distance. And when she says to me, when you're up there studying for your PhD, I feel lonely, I would say, but I don't get it. I'm in the same house with you. I would be anxious if she left. But this is how it runs, right? And I didn't get, because I was running that old safety. At one point, distance was a good thing if you didn't want to meet Mr. Wall halfway up, right? And all of us are running these old safety programs that we defend, and most, against these missing feelings. Most couples have what I call an inner adaptive child that's defending against not feeling welcome. Of feeling against unwelcomed or unworthy or uncherished or disempowered. And when those two adaptive children get into an argument, nothing good happens. So if you're out there and you're in a relationship and you're wanting, something needs to be fixed, just check in. Scale of 1 to 10. How welcomed with joy do you feel? This is your brain's natural GPS. It's not as complicated as dating apps make it. Scale of 1 to 10. How worthy do you feel to reach out and have your needs met? Scale of 1 to 10. How cherished and protected do I feel? If you're a man, then you're going to probably substitute honored or respected, okay? Or maybe appreciated. It's not the first word that ran through my mind, but it is. They're the same ballpark. And then, how empowered do I feel with choice, having a voice? If any of those are under a 7 or 8, that's a problem. There are skills. And if 2 of those are missing, you're probably thinking, gosh, 2 of those feelings, I should say. Then you're thinking, gosh, something must be wrong. Maybe we should work with a coach. Maybe we should work with a therapist. And 3 or 4 are missing. You're in a toxic relationship. Now, the cool thing here is if you're a couple, and I know you have a lot of couples that just want to make it better. You want to find out how both people are feeling about about those feelings, those 4 feelings. Because when you get welcomed and worthy and cherished and empowered, you feel loved. And then you want to check in every week, and you want to find out how, one doesn't feel always so welcomed, and the other one doesn't feel always so empowered. I guarantee you, this is what your arguments are going to be wrapped around, like night follows day. And if you find ways to give each other those missing feelings that should probably go back to childhood, that relationship automatically goes up. And it's like one of those balloons that needs 4 balloons to be able to rise above, and you've got to have all 4 to soar.
I love this. It's so clear. I was like literally just going to say that everyone listening to this, you want to sit down with your partner today and just check in with both of you what number you're at. Now, what if you feel that you're giving your partner one of these things, let's say welcoming, and for some reason your partner feels less, which is just based on, like you said, how their brain is wired. What can you do specifically for each one of them to make them feel more loved?
Okay, so there's another little quirk to this, and that we all have what's called a complex equivalent for all of these, right? And so you got to find out what equals welcome. Now, we know that there's couple signs. Welcome is part is not having a harsh startup with each other when you've got a conflict, right? Welcoming can be tracking each other's bids. But if someone says, for some person, it might be welcome is, did you notice me where I was at, what I was feeling when I walked in the door? Okay, could be. Or it might be hugs. This gets into old Gary Chapman stuff, love languages.
Yes, yes, yeah, of
But,
course.
you know, but welcome could be a whole lot of different things. I mean, for me, I love a hug walking in the door. That's not necessarily for everybody. For another person, that might be, how was your day today, honey? Or, gosh, you look great, right? Or that's a beautiful new, whatever they need. Okay. But talk, what does it mean? I was once having a friend over, couple, and they've got a beautiful 10-year marriage, later in life marriage. And it was after the book came out. And this was not a session. And we were just talking about the book. They had both read the book. And they just both looked at it. We do pretty good on three of those, but we don't do a lot with welcome each other with joy. And she goes, hmm, you're right. We tend to kind of ignore each other, and we do welcomed and cherished, but we don't walk in the door. And I watched the two, and they just looked at us and says, we need to do better at this. That's it. And they said, well, and he says, well, what we're doing? And she said, and then it was, and I'm just listening in, for about 3 minutes when this couple realizes, oh, we could do just a little better, and they both find out what it is. So cherish can be a lot of different things. Empowering can be different things. Okay. Um, for one person, somebody could feel really cherished if you say, honey, you know, there's some really cool vitamins I've been noticing you've not been feeling well. And that may not be what they are. In fact, they might say, oh, you're trying to create my experience now. Now I feel disempowered. Now I got to be on vitamins to feel love. Now that's a missing rate too, right? I mean, I've seen this. So for another one, well, vitamins is everything. That's how I make myself feel cherished. But for them, it might be that you are looking over them and you are calling in and texting in at lunch to see how they're doing. That's the vitamins thing. Now, these are all bids for attention.
Yeah.
Notice attuned, what we're talking about is attuned and timely. I don't know if you've ever, if you've been in a relationship with somebody, sometimes I've had the app from my iPhone will give me the text messages 24 hours later. I don't know why Apple does that sometimes, but did you get my text? And if it was really important, it looks like you missed a bid. So this is about really getting on their map, what they need, and then timely bids. Really good couples respond to each other's bids of attention in a positive, attuned way 86% of the time. That means you can blow it, and anything under 50 is a problem. But if you get 50 or better, you're doing pretty good, right? Now, the other was the couples in distress, they only turn toward each other 33% of the time. The other 2/3, they're turning against. Well, why would you want that? Oh, there's no never need to what you want. Of course you want something else. Or they just turn away and they go, can you pass me the salt? As if they never heard you. Or they're just reading their book, or they're doing this little thing, looking at their iPhone. Did you say something? This is the greatest disruptor. This iPhone is the greatest disruptor of attachment in the last 3,000, 4,000 years, other than maybe war, because it takes so much of attention. And every time you turn around, apps are trying to get your attention, and it's deleting from the attention pool. You don't get on Facebook. You get on Facebook, and next thing you know, you're getting on a thing. Oh, someone said something about you. They know what belonging does, and they're using belonging to actually erode belonging. And the effect is to belong. It erodes between couples. I have to tell people, stay away from the cookie. When you are talking, put it down. Eye contact. Stay away from texting. Texting is empty calories. 80% comes through visual. So see each other, feel each other, hear each other. Text, not so much.
Yeah, for sure. So basically, if you're not on the level that you want to be in any of these four, you have to go and figure out what your partner needs and see how you could go and carry that out.
Yes, you do. You want to be, I just do a check-in. I have all of my couples do a check-in. You want to do it at least, I like it every week, but every other week I'll take it, but you want to check in regularly on the state. Honey, on a scale of 1 to 10, how did I do as your partner this week? Anything less than a 9, you say, okay, then you go back to square one. So what would have helped me been a better partner? What feeling was missing? That's what I add to it. And you say, was it welcome? And then you go, well, honey, when you walked in 3 nights in a row and you were so preoccupied with your pot, you went straight to your bed, you went straight to the office and have ignored the fact that, the kids were were all just being weird with me because of COVID and all this stuff. I didn't feel very welcomed and I didn't feel very worthy. Bingo. Oh, what could I have done better? Well, could you have at least checked in with me? Bingo. That's the sort of thing. When couples check in on the feeling level, and if you're a guy out there, it is a feeling. It is a feeling. It's not I feel that. Feel that. Once you put that, it's I feel that something didn't go right. No, that's not a feeling. I felt, and you can use your own words. I felt disappointed. When, and I didn't feel, but if you check into these 4 pillar feelings, that's what my new theory is in the book, is checking that you use it in singles, you use it in couples, you use it to repair 4 feelings. You check in with those 4 feelings, and then what happened? Now, almost always, these 4 feelings will track back uh, to, you'll find out. So if your parent, your spouse says, so, I didn't feel very cherished. I felt like sometimes I don't even feel like I belong in this family. Well, what happened? Well, sometimes when you're just doing X, Y, or Z, and then you can say, is there a backstory to this? Yeah, it makes me feel exactly like, it just feels exactly like mom and dad. And one of the things I have learned for myself, it's the humility, is the moment I say she is acting exactly like my mom or, I never had a father that was there. I'm going, what's the chances of that being the case? Right now, it will feel exactly the same, but it's not. But it is the old wound that is looking for ways things are going to be this, ways I'm not going to belong, or ways I can't have my needs met, right?
Someone who's an anxious or avoidant, is it possible that no matter how much you give them for any of these feelings, they'll never feel satisfied?
Not in the work that I've done. If you are working at a core way, I work in a little different way, and you really give back either an anxious one, that feeling of welcomed, worthy, and they can feel it. This is it. It can't be a thought. Oh, yes, there's these 4 feelings. No, 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 no. They feel it in their bones. The brain automatically takes a better position. There's no part of that part of your brain that will just stick with a bad deal. It will automatically take a better deal. And
Uh,
when you feel welcomed, you just do something differently. I had one client years and years ago, man, talk about unwelcomed and not cherished. I mean, his father rejected him and beat on him through his whole thing, and he was very avoidant. He learned that if I have contact, if I with dad, I'll get beat. So he would talk, and his eyes would be everywhere because his system learned any eye contact. Imagine what that would do to dates. Couldn't get past the second date. When we worked with that and gave him that feeling of being welcomed with feeling of safe and some power, suddenly he could keep eye contact. He got married. We also work with him. I've had clients that over the years, I don't know, I've probably had 10 clients that he's referred to me, or I've run across a few people that knew him, right? And I've literally a couple of years ago, and I've worked with him maybe 12 years ago, a, a person called me and says, I know blank, blank, blank. And I said, and it says, and the difference between now and 10 years ago is so amazing. I want it too. Because he's a happily married man with very different, and the moment he felt welcomed, the world felt like a cozy oyster. It could be in a relationship. The feelings run everything. You give it the system a better feeling, it does better things. If you don't give it the feeling, if you give it coaching or a new story, or, and if you work with just a limiting belief and you don't work at the feeling that the limiting belief is explaining, you'll get rid of the limiting belief, but it'll come back in a different way. It'll just be a different limiting belief because something's got to explain the feeling. So if you can swap out these feelings, it's like a layaway plan. These feelings give us rights and capacities to have a voice, to reach out, to be in a we, right? And if it's not safe, the brain takes away like an old layaway plan. As years and years ago, when you bought for Christmas, if you didn't have money, you didn't have safe, you could buy something and man, they put it in the back room of the store and it would be safe there until you had the money later on. That whole system. So when it's just the system trying to keep it safe so that you can bring it out when it is safe later. Nothing's, you have missing rights, but some part, put it in storage.
My question now is, let's say if someone's in a relationship, they're not secure, either avoidant or anxious, and they're, as a couple, they're working on this. They're really feeling these four emotions constantly. Does this person getting this feeling all the time, the four of them, do they become a secure person like this? Or are they still an anxious avoidant and this is the way that they're just dealing with it?
No, no, no. If you can change the feeling, you've changed. Remember, the attachments run on feelings. That's what's new about my theory. You change the feeling, you have changed the attachment. These are like the molecules. I mean, the atoms in a molecule. H2O. You take out any one of those molecules, and all you've got is oxygen or you've got hydrogen, right? But water is different. Water is, and you put them back. Now, it's also true that a lot of times, once you've given couples these feelings, they don't automatically know the skill set. Like the secure who kind of picked it up in a secure family, right? And so you sometimes have to give that. Skills, these feelings give skills. Like in my home, with a borderline mother, it wasn't, welcomed with joy was not something you got. I mean, on a good day, it would be snarky on a good day. And now my sister took after her more. And we had the same third grade teacher. I was told this in my 20s by my third grade teacher, by the way. And, I said, man, anything my mother is, I'm going to go the opposite way. And it turned out to be the way to go because I realized as a young child, this can't be right. Something's wrong. I'm just going to do anything different because this doesn't look right. Whereas she took after him. And the way Mrs. Graham always worked is she'd have visitors come in. And even as third grade, if we're talking about flowers and science, she'd have a florist come in. And there would be a greeter of the day that when the knock came on the door, you would go and open the door and say, welcome in. Right. So when she gets my sister after me, there is a day that she thinks she's getting the second version of Gary, but not knowing the difference, right? And not knowing. So this is how it works. She goes, well, you're the greeter of the day. And she says, well, what does that look like? He says, well, you go up to the door and you turn the knob and you open, you go, welcome in. He goes, okay. Now this is what happens. But she's running the feeling of unwelcome, right? Right? This is what happens if you give skills and you don't change the feelings. She walks up, knock on the door, opens the door, opens it, says, well, come in. Same skill, different feeling.
Yeah.
This is why if you give skills to couples and you haven't changed them, I've watched couples with using skills that manage to bleed in their feelings of unworthy to the other or the unwelcome. And even when I've done, you first restore the feelings and make it safe for them to feel welcomed and worthy and cherished and powerful. And couples are always dueling about, if somebody felt unworthy, they'll marry someone or partner up with someone that makes them feel unworthy. Meanwhile, the one that felt unworthy felt disempowered. And when this one feels unworthy, she'll empower him or he'll him. And now they're dueling, and now they're saying, you're just like dad, you're just like mom, when it's these old feelings. So you have to give the skills, but you have to give the feelings first. And when couples give and take these four feelings, so long as there's some value alignments, there does have to be some initial attraction. And there does have to be some values alignment. I'm not saying that, you know, every two secure people can't get partnered up. They just can't. If one wants to be secure and live in a teepee and the other one's a 5,000 square foot, and you don't have a problem to do that, But with a little values, but these feelings are what create the love that lasts.
I love that so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Gary Salyer. Pronounced it right this time?
Yes, it's
that was awesome. It's so clear, exactly knowing what to do. It's awesome. Thank you. I really appreciated this.
Well, thank you for having me on. And if you're out there and these feelings aren't there, you do have to do the deep work, to restore these feelings. That's not just coaching, but it's doable work. Your brain had a birthright. I just want to leave that. You have a birthright to feel welcomed and worthy and cherished and empowered. You don't have to do anything to earn it. And because your brain was born with the capacity of this, it had to be taken away. It can be restored. Most couples can, even if they're in dire straits, occasionally, but about 85% of the time, I've been able to help couples find real love that's between them again. There's a 15% that maybe things are too far gone, but most time, and that compares with what's going on in therapy about 35% of the time, with about half of them relapsing after a year. But if you reclaim these feelings and these missing rights I talk about in my book, Safe to Love Again, and you learn how to give and receive these feelings and rights, most couples can take all the good things and just make it better.
Okay, Dr. Salyer, for our very last question, how would you describe an extraordinary relationship without using the words love, connection, and for you, I'm going to use the word safety?
So, Esty, when you ask about an extraordinary relationship, I would say categorically that words like love, connection, and safety are just natural. To be honest, I don't believe any relationship could be extraordinary without there being love, connection, and safety. It would be like describing water without atoms of oxygen and hydrogen. These are the pillars of any lasting, loving relationship. You have to have love, connection, and safety before you have anything else like passion. And what else does the feelings like joy and worthy and cherished and empowered create but love, connection, and safety? So are there more characteristics than those three? Yes. But love, connection, safety, these are the bedrock essentials. So any extraordinary relationship has to have them. And without them, I could not call it an extraordinary relationship.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Did you enjoy that episode? Could you do me a personal favor and subscribe and leave a review? It would mean a lot to me. Thank you so much and have an awesome day.